On this week's Eastern Conference roundup of Locked On NHL, we have two great series for you. One is already underway. The other begins tonight. So we'll recap what we saw from Game 1 between the Leafs and Panthers and what can we expect in the Hurricanes-Devils series beginning at 7 o'clock from Carolina. It's all coming up, and it's brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get $20 off your first ticket purchase. That's Locked On NHL for $20 off your first ticket purchase at the Game Time app. This is the Locked On NHL podcast. It's your team every day.
Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen on this Wednesday, May 3rd. I'm Ross Levitan from Locked On Senators. With me, as always, it's Mike DiStefano from Locked On Leafs. We like to call this the Battle of Ontario edition of Locked On NHL, your team every day. But, Mikey, I got to start with the last time we spoke. It had been 19 years since the Leafs had won a playoff series, and now we're going on about 5 days. So congratulations, buddy. I told you in the preview, I said the Leafs had everything to win, but I still picked Tampa. They came through, man. 3 overtime wins. It's something to be proud of.
On the road. 3 overtime wins on the road in a building in which Tampa Bay had won 74% of the games played at Amalie Arena this year. It was pretty impressive, but ultimately, I did think that Toronto was the deeper lineup. They've got a lot of stars up front who finally came through in the playoffs and broke through and looked like themselves, I suppose. And, Samsonov had a couple of really strong performances from the back end as the backstop, the goaltender there. So, Toronto earned it, absolutely. And off to round 2 they go. Didn't start off so hot in the first game against Florida, but you know what? They didn't win game 1 either in round 1. And guess what happened? Went on to win 4 of the next 5, booked their ticket to round 2. So I think Leaf fans still very optimistic against the Florida Panthers here.
Recording midday on Wednesday after a 4-2 Panthers win on the road in Toronto in game 1. And Mikey, I'm sure you know this, but all 4 Panthers goal scorers, Ontario natives.
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't realize that all 4 were Ontario boys, but I guess that would make some sense. It was funny. After the game, I was down there listening to Carter Verhaeghe talk, former Maple Leaf, of course, Niagara Ice Dogs legend also. Shout out to the Ice Dogs. But, they were talking and asking, like, hey, what is it about the Ontario boys where they just kind of get up for this game? Him, Brandon Montour, like Fred Bennett, like all these Ontario kids coming through with some big time games. And, he just said, yeah, we got a lot of friends and family in the building. You want to put on a show and a performance for those guys. It just gives you, most players grew up as Leaf fans. And for a guy like Carter Verhaeghe, who, he ended up getting the game winner actually in that game. He was part of the Maple Leafs organization. They trade him away. You don't think there's a little bit of a chip on his shoulder whenever he plays Toronto? Absolutely there is. So, I think ultimately most guys around the league always like to give their best against Toronto just because that's the team who they grew up rooting for, and especially when they're in Scotiabank Arena with friends and family in the building. And, last night was no exception to it. The Ontario kids played well, but let me tell you, that Brandon Montour, he's a player. He's a player, man. Like 73 points in the regular season. It's up to 6 goals in the playoffs. Like, wouldn't have got through Boston if it wasn't for him. And he's someone who's like 10 years into his career pretty much. Spent a long time in Anaheim, and then he was in Buffalo for a little bit, and then finally lands in Florida. And it took him a couple of years, but this year's everything has really clicked for him, and he's been a number 1 defenseman for them.
It's crazy when you look at how many PIMs he has, though, and he did take a few bad penalties over the course of round 1 and even at the end of the regular season. Ottawa and Florida had a couple of games where he finished the game with 2 goals and 4 minor penalties, and you're like, what's going on here? Finishes the year, 73 points and 107 PIMs in 80 games, and I don't even know if he got in more than 1 or 2 fights in that for major penalties, but yeah, he's such a calming influence, and you wondered, like, they had so many offensive defensemen over the last number of years in Florida. You think of the Keith Yandles of the world, and he's coming in there, and he just shattered Keith Yandles' single season record for most points by a defenseman. And you're right, the 16 goals jumps off the page as well. And he was a star in last night's game in Toronto. And I'm curious what's next for him. Yeah, 9 points, 6 goals in 8 games so far in this playoffs. Wow, unreal for him. And yeah, you're right with these Ontario kids. It's the same with when obviously I'm based in Winnipeg now, and Vegas came up here. Mark Stone, Winnipeg guy, 8 points in 5 games that series. Chandler Stevenson from 5 hours away in Saskatchewan, 8 points in 5 games. Brett Howden from just outside of Winnipeg, 4 points in 5 games. Like these local kids, like it makes sense, right? They're kind of immersed in those storylines as well. They're on their social media, and based on who they follow, their friends and family, they're following those teams throughout the season. I'm sure they follow the Leafs on social media as well. So they know kind of the magnitude of the situation. And who better on a team than Matthew Tkachuk when you want to play villain? You want to play that spoiler role. Like, to me, I mean, we're not even close to being at Conn Smythe picks so far, but I can tell you, you mentioned Brandon Montour. They ain't winning that series against Boston without Matthew Tkachuk either.
No, I mean, the guy's got 14 points already. It's been 8 games in the playoffs. Got 14 points. He's outstanding last night in Game 1 against Toronto. He was really a star. Ended up with 3 helpers and 9 hits also. So he's getting it done in a lot of different facets. And like just that whole line of him, Bennett, and Nick Cousins just hemmed Toronto the entire time. And they just had no answer for it. Didn't matter which defensive pairing they put out against him, which forward grouping they put out against him. You know, that guy just took liberties last night, and he was outstanding. He's going to be a problem for Toronto in this series. They got to figure out a way to take away ice from him and make sure that he can't be effective. And it's interesting because typically you say, well, play aggressive with him, right? Try and hit him, lean on him a little bit, make him think twice when he has the puck. The dude got rattled twice. So a couple of thumping hits in that game. Didn't matter. He don't care. He's still making the plays. So it's not like, getting physical with him is going to work. It seems like it legitimately powers him up, and he gets even better as the games get physical. So they have to figure out a way to really slow him down if the Maple Leafs want to get it's still going to be difficult, I suppose. But either way, they got to figure out a way to stop that guy.
Well, they tried. I mean, great hit by Luke Shen early in that
That's
game.
what I mean. Like getting physical isn't the solution. They got to find another way to stop him from performing.
Because you know what he did the next shift, right? He didn't go back at Luke Shen. He went and finished Mitch Marner as hard as he could. He's like, you're going to come after me. I'm not going to go after you, Luke Shen. I'm going to go after your skill guys. And that's kind of, I feel like that's ingrained from Big Walt, just being like, hey, you don't care about the 5th, 6th defenseman. You want to wear on the guys who are really going to make a difference in this series. Now, turning our attention to the Leafs, a guy who, I mean, he's in the mold that he could be a power forward one day. This Matthew Nyes kid's the real deal, eh? Usually if you see a puck go off your stick and in your own net, you can kind of weigh on that for a little while. Now, great play by Austin Matthews to set him up and give him some space down Broadway to make a play. But what can you say about his ability to stick with it and finish that off backhand and just what he's brought to the Leafs lineup through his, 5-6 games in the playoffs?
He's been huge, man, huge. And that was only the second loss that they've had with him in the lineup since, signing and becoming a professional hockey player out of college. He's been terrific. I mean, there was a lot of, high expectations on this kid coming in, obviously, somebody who was a finalist for, College Player of the Year and Hobey Baker Award. And all of a sudden, he's actually exceeded those. Like how hard is it to exceed expectations in Toronto? It's almost impossible to do, yet he's done it. Not just with his offensive abilities, but even like defensively. I've been very impressed with his tenacity and, puck battles, able to win along the wall, and his puck protection skills, his being able to retreat on the back check and, rip some pucks off players. He's done that. He did it a couple of times in the Tampa series. He did it last night also. Relentless forecheck. I just think that there's a lot of different things he does that really lends himself to being a quality power forward, and finally finished off a play last night. He hadn't scored, but he'd been around the net. He'd been, on the ice for all 3 of those overtime winners that Toronto was able to get against Tampa Bay. And last night, finally able to put one in the back of the net himself. And like you said, it was just him sticking with it, right? tries one shot and then just sticks with it and finally tucks it in. And I think there's more where that came from. Now that he's got one, I could see kind of an explosion coming, especially since he's now playing up on that top line with Austin Matthews. And whether it's Mitch Marner or William Nylander, he's going to have a lot of looks. And he's proven, throughout the course of the last couple of years since he's been drafted, that dude can finish. And he had his first one go last night. I think we'll see a few more go over the course of the series.
So 4 points in 6 games for the young 20-year-old from Scottsdale, Arizona.
Yeah, he spoke about how cool it was and how fitting. He actually used the word fitting, that it was Austin Matthews, the Arizona native that he looked up to growing up, was the one who assisted on his first NHL goal.
Yeah, you know who else from Scottsdale? Matthew Tkachuk. A lot of Phoenix ties there. His dad.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like Matt Tkachuk, we talked about the Ontario rivalry, the Ontario boys coming in, but Matt Tkachuk's got ties to this team too. You think about growing up playing on the national team with Austin Matthews, and then also ties with Mitch Marner in their Memorial Cup run in London, a few years back. So he's got ties, and he's going to want to try and one up those boys for sure. So far, he's up 1-0, especially on that opening goal. He made Mitch Marner look pretty silly on that.
Well, play. And it was on your station, TSN 1050,
before
Leafs Panthers at the end of the year, that Keith Tkachuk became executive of the year for the Panthers and called them soft. And next thing, I don't think they've lost a game since, Mike.
So that day, okay, he comes on our station first up with Korolnik and Kolyakovo. He calls them soft, and they deserve what they're getting.
Sorry, he also said they should play more like the Senators, but go on.
He did say that. Credit. He did say that. And so that happened in the morning. And then during the game, Paul Maurice went on the massive tirade, ripped into his entire bench, and had a great, ripped off the glasses and just went after it. Basically also called his team soft. Used a more derogatory phrasing, but essentially called them soft.
Hey, if he did that in Winnipeg, the players would have told him to kick rocks. So we won't get into that. But all the players were like, yeah, Rick Bowness is wrong to call us out.
Yeah, that was
no-showed in Game 5.
Yeah, that was real as well.
Crazy. But yeah, not with Paul Maurice here. Paul Maurice was calling him every word in the book.
Yes, and then that was also the same night in game where the Lion King was born, had his first stellar performance, and then carried them Hamburglar-esque all the way into the playoffs, where all you got to do is make it into the dance, man. You make it into the dance, anything could happen. And clearly they beat Boston. They were the better team in that 7-game series somehow, some way. There were some injuries, obviously, on Boston, which probably helped them. But, they got into the dance, and they pulled off that massive upset. And here they are, up 1-0 after the first game in round 2 against the Leafs.
There's one more note I want to get into on this game. We'll do it on the other side. We'll also get into the Carolina Hurricanes against New Jersey Devils series that begins tonight. Finally, of all the teams that were out early in round 1, who is going to take it the hardest? Who needs the most changes? We'll wrap up the seasons for Boston, the Rangers, the Lightning, and the New York Islanders, all on the outside looking in after round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Coming up next, you're listening to Locked On NHL. Today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful, especially not as stressful as the game itself when we're in the playoffs. Game Time is fast and easy for buying tickets to all the sports, movies, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and best price guarantees, you can stop the stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun that you'll have. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has tickets right now, up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on football, basketball, baseball, hockey, concert, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best prices. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. So snag tickets without stress at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
Can I explain to you the article that I am currently reading. I just saw it come on my Twitter timeline, and I clicked on it. Very good clickbait article, but it's a legitimate thing that's happening in the world. Are you interested, Ross? It's not sports related, but are you interested really quickly?
Oh, it's not about Snoop Dogg buying the Sens?
It's not about Snoop Dogg buying the Sens, but that also crept up on my Twitter page yesterday. Was not expecting to see that, and then he was all over ESPN. That was something that we can get into in a moment if you would like, as the Locked On Sens host. I'm sure you have plenty of opinions on that, or you can go check out his opinions on Locked On Sens. But no, this is a galactic situation.
Aliens?
What's that?
Aliens?
No, galactic gobble. Star swallows planet in one big gulp. We got stars swallowing planets out here. What the hell is going on out in the universe?
How many planets are there? There's 8 planets?
Well, there's 8 planets in our
4.
solar system. There's only 8 planets, or 9 if you include Pluto, whatever the hell. Apparently, Pluto goes in and out of becoming being a planet. I'm still not exactly sure how the hell they decide on that one, but apparently, like, they call it a galactic feast. It's so bizarre. And they said that this one was different because typically this is a different sort of eating. The star gobbled the whole planet in one gulp. In contrast, other hot Jupiters we have previously studied are being delicately licked and nibbled. What the hell does any of that mean? How, like, this is a star we're talking about. Are stars alive? Like, I'm so confused right now.
I didn't know that stars had mouths.
That's what I'm saying here, guy. Like, are stars just black holes?
Yeah.
The universe is the most bizarre thing ever. Not to get existential, but, like, holy smokes, I don't understand a goddamn thing in this universe. Not a thing. Barely understand how.
Yeah, I was going to say. Like, R.I.P. Rest in Planet?
Yeah, it doesn't even say what planet it was. That's the thing. I don't think it was one of, like, the main planets, which
I hope not. I hope it wasn't Earth.
But it goes on to say that apparently in, like, 5 billion years, here's what it say, if it's any consolation, it's happened in 5 billion years. Something to the effect of something's going to happen to Earth. Oh, it's a gloomy preview of what will happen to Earth when our sun morphs into a giant red and gobbles the 4 inner planets. But if it's any consolation, this will happen in about 5 billion years, they say.
Oh, okay, so nothing for us to worry about.
No, but I guess 5 billion years from now, RIP to Earth. Yeah.
Oh my God! Start the countdown clock.
Yeah. Sorry to my great infinity grandchildren. Apologies for what we've done on our time on Earth.
This is what happens when the Leafs win a playoff series.
Yes, that's it. Planets just start getting eaten up and gobbled up by stars. That's exactly what happened. The universe does not know how to react.
Man, how about the Lion King getting thrown off the ledge, Simba style? And then next thing you know, Sergei Bobrovsky is channeling his inner 2019 Vezina status. He was unreal last night.
Yeah, he was unbelievable, especially late in that game. When they pulled the goalie, they had like 4 or 5 really great opportunities. He had the one robbing of William Nylander, kind of a right to left pad save that looked like a sure tap in. Yeah, he looked like his Vezina self for sure. His blocker last night looked like it was 10 feet wide. He was just punching everything away. It was outstanding.
I mean, it just shows how voodoo goalies are, but he's in a pretty exclusive club of goalies that have more than one Vezina trophy.
Well, that's the $10 million goaltender right there. Like that's why he got paid $10 million, because that guy can arise at any time. It doesn't happen nearly as often as Florida wished it would, but I mean, this is good timing for the Panthers, that's for sure.
If you go back to 1988, only 4 goalies have won the Vezina trophy more than once. 4 goalies, trivia time. We know Sergei Bobrovsky. Who are the other 3?
Brodeur, for sure.
4 plus Bobrovsky.
Okay. So since what was the year?
Since 1988. We can actually keep going back.
Okay.
We can go all the way back to
Marty. We'll go Marty.
Yeah.
Marty Brodeur, clearly.
Yeah.
Who else has won a couple here? Dom Hasek?
Yes.
Marty, Dom. Patrick Waugh.
Yep.
There's one more.
There's actually two more. I can't count very well, but officially there's only
Bob
two
has won it a couple times.
more. Who?
Has Carey Price won it twice?
No. Only once for Carey Price.
I can't think of the other.
Eddie
the Eagle?
Yes.
Eddie the Eagle, yes. I got it right on the buzzer.
91 and 93. And there's actually one more because I said 4 initially, but I missed one. The one that we missed, ironically, is the most recent one. This guy was unbelievable for only a short NHL career. If he played the way he played in 5 years, he would have been a Hall of Famer.
Oh, the way you say that makes me...
He played in the division.
Tuca?
No, close.
Timmy Thomas?
Timmy Thomas.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say Tim, and I was like, I don't know if he won 2 or not. I know he had like 2 or 3 seasons where he was electric.
Ridiculous.
He won 2 Vezinas.
2009 and 2011. He won 2 Vezinas in 3 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and the Cup in 2011 as well. I'll never forget him cross-checking Henrik Sedin to come too close in Game 1 of the Cup final. That was...
He was a loose cannon, that guy.
And he finished his career at the Florida Panthers. It all comes full circle there with Tim Thomas. But yeah, goaltending wins championships. I think that's pretty easy to draw your finger when you look at what the main reason is. But power play also has something to do with it. Neither team with a power play goal in last night's game. How'd you like Paul Maurice giving one of these to the ref? Did you see that photo?
Oh, I saw the photo, but then after the game, he comes out and has some sort of quote about how, we got to take it on the chin. Coming into the season, there was a reputation that this team had built about complaining and squawking at the officials after every penalty. We knew that it was going to be, it's a little bit of a Michael Bunting type of reputation, but for the whole Panthers clan. And he comes out and he's like, yeah, we got to take it on the chin. Yeah, like 30 minutes prior, he's doing this nonsense. Yeah, that's taking it on the chin with grace. What are you talking about, Paul?
He's funny.
I'll say this, though. I could listen to that man speak for days, dude. Like, I know you're in Winnipeg. You would have heard him over the course of the last couple of years, man.
No, my first year, he quit after 2 months. I had to deal with Dave Lowry.
Oh, that's right. You moved out there just as he was kind of finishing up there.
Yeah.
But, man, I tuned in. I was there live for the first ever Paul Maurice presser post-game last night, and guy spoke for about 15 minutes, and it was all extremely intelligent, extremely thoughtful, and so insightful. I could listen to that man like recite the Bible, for Pete's sake. He could recite this random galactic article that I found about this hungry star that's swallowing up planets, and I would probably be very entertained and soothed by it.
Yeah, Paul Attenborough, this guy?
It's yeah. The Leaf fans, I suppose, maybe don't like to hear these guys talk like Paul Maurice and like John Cooper, but boy, are they ever entertaining speakers.
They certainly are, and so is Lindy Ruff, who had quite the moment years ago. Him and Brian Murray going at it between the benches, but always a good entertainer, to say the least. He's in action tonight as the New Jersey Devils will begin their series against Rod Brind'Amour and the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll discuss that and more next on Locked On NHL. All right. So, Mikey, we don't have to get into the whole Snoop Dogg thing. I'll just send people over to Locked On Senators for that. There's so many avenues, but I will say I was proud of my opening statement. I said, coming up on today's Locked On Senators, the Sens sales saga has been going like this and like that and like this, and now Snoop Dogg's involved. So I was proud of myself for that one. But yeah, if you had told me 2 years ago that Ryan Reynolds and Snoop Dogg would be competing to buy the Ottawa Senators, I would have looked at you upside down, sideways, and backwards. But here we are. This is the reality we're living in, and it does give us some content here while we're just sitting on the sidelines. Verbal meme, the SpongeBob meme, where Squidward's up in his room, just looking. Everyone else is having fun. Yeah, we're up there in the dark, just living, waiting for a team to falter. Hey, of those teams, you said it was an easy choice. Of all the teams eliminated in the first round, who's most likely to miss next year? Who should I be circling on my dartboard this summer and just wishing the worst for them?
Well, I think it's always, if you're wishing the worst, I think everyone wants to wish the worst for the Boston Bruins, don't they?
Yeah.
Like, if that's what we're talking about. You know what? Today, I will say the answer is probably, like, if I had to guess, the Islanders, who kind of just squeaked in there. And, I think that they're a club that relied so much on goaltending, and I think they got to do something up front and get some more firepower. Bo Horvat, was supposed to help with that, but his goal input really dropped off after the trade. So unless that improves going into next season, we'll see if they can struggle finding goals again. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Boston, just because they went on this historic run. But if Patrice Bergeron steps away from the game and he retires, and David Krejci retires, how much is that going to hurt this team? Like, that's your number one and number two center, the backbone of your team, really, with Patrice Bergeron. He leaves. What does that do for this club going forward?
And not only that, Mikey, but they hit performance bonuses this year, David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron. That's going to count against next year's cap. So they're already up against it. Like, they might have to make a decision on Taylor Hall this summer, or get rid of someone with a high salary. Pasta's going from he's well worth it, but he's doubling his salary from this year. He went from 6.6 to over 11.5. Like, you're going to have to be able to make that up in other areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And they got a couple of UFAs too that they're going to have to think about. They'll probably, see if Tyler Bertuzzi wants to come back. He had a strong playoff performance with them. And obviously they gave up a lot to bring in Dmitry Orlov, and he's up for a UFA as well. So, a couple of big pieces that they're going to have to think on. And that's not to even mention, dude, Jeremy Swayman's an RFA this year.
Wow.
That guy's probably going to want a little bit of money after the season that he had. And I think you got to make a decision. Is it going to be Allmark, or is it going to be Swayman going forward as kind of your guy? I don't know if they could afford to have both goaltenders given their cap situations. That also kind of comes into play there a little bit.
And you just saw 6 games of them. Are the Tampa Bay Lightning reaching the end of their cup window, or do you think that it still extends as long as Braden Point and Sergachev, these kind of the next wave of young talent? Because for them, like, they're probably going to lose Alex Killorn, just like they lost Yanni Gourde 2 summers ago and Palat last summer. Like, these are the depth pieces that really made them so hard to play against. And Andre Palat, side note, and we'll get to the Devils, like, this guy is the definition of a playoff performer.
Oh, absolutely. And you felt his non-presence when he was playing, when he wasn't with Tampa this year. Like, you knew what he was all about last season, and this year, not having him there, just that extra guy who could finish. Certainly his presence was missed in Tampa Bay, and it's going to be interesting with them. Like, you're right. They've got Sergachev, Cirelli, Braden Point, some really young guys who are still in their mid-20s, approaching or in their primes. And, they're real solid players. But then they've got that second, that aging core of Stamkos and Kucherov and Victor Hedman, who seem to kind of slide down a little bit and had a good playoff, but turns out he had an injury as well, a hip impingement that he played through, which is just, I can only imagine how painful that was.
Well, you could see it on the bench when he's grabbing the trainer. He's like, you need to get this pain away from me right now.
Yeah, it was something, man. And a couple of guys played through some stuff. Braden Point playing through some broken rib cartilage, which you kind of expected when you saw that hit. It's like, well, that guy broke a rib or two, and yeah, some cartilage definitely left there. They're going to be an interesting team. Like, I can never close the book on the Tampa Bay Lightning, and it'll be interesting too. Like, it just seemed like they somewhat ran out of gas. Like, the Stamkos, Kucherov Point, they really weren't as good as they have been and as good as they can be. And I wonder if they just ran out of gas after 3 straight years to a cup final. But a full off season, some chance to rest, recover, and get a full, off season in. I think they're still a team that's going to contend next year.
Yeah, and Andre Vasilevsky, right? Like, these guys, they played 78 playoff games over the last 4 years, including the 7 this spring. Like, that's a full season of hockey extra than teams that haven't made the playoffs.
Did you hear Ryan O'Reilly's little chirp to Patty Maroon, former teammate of his, in the lineup in the handshake game? Well, basically said, dude, 4 straight years to the Cup final, man. I think you've earned a nice long off season. Enjoy it.
Honest.
Yeah.
That's hey, just before we get to that series, like, if you had to pick the top performer, because we know it's Matthew Tkachuk from Florida, from Toronto. Who was it for you in round one?
In round one? God, you know what? It's a toss-up. Morgan Riley was outstanding for the Maple Leafs, and he's someone who was much maligned in this market. Talked about a lot as somebody whose game really was not where it needed to be this year. He would tell you that himself also, but he kicked it into fourth gear, man, for this Toronto Maple Leafs team in the playoffs. Scored, some big goals throughout the duration of this series. One was a game winner in overtime. One was a game tying goal. And then one was also, I scored another big goal. I'm trying to remember where he had it, but 3 big goals in that game. He had a 4-assist game in game number 2. Like, he was just a monster for that team on both ends of the ice. So I think I got to give it to Morgan Riley. But hey, the goaltender, Ilya Samsonov, outdueled Vasilevsky in a best of 7. And he deserves a little bit of credit as well.
For sure. I think the New Jersey Devils have an easy answer here. Akira Schmid. Can this guy keep his run rolling? Because this guy, he looks unbelievable up here. He's played 5 games. He's 4-1 with a .951 save percentage and 2 shutouts.
Unbelievable. Against the New York Rangers. Like, the Rangers are pretty highfalutin. Like, that's a potent offense. You've got Zibanejad, Kreider, you've got Panarin, Showtime, Patty Kane, Tarasenko, Adam Fox from the blue line. Like, there are guys who know how to put the puck in the net and finish. Philip Hedl, like, the list goes on and on. And yeah, he was phenomenal, including a shutout in a series deciding game 7, which is Vasilevsky like. I don't know. Do you feel like you're more the goalie guy than I am, goalie friendly show over at Locked On Sens. Like, do you think this is sustainable? Like, do you like what you're seeing out of this Akira Schmid fella, or is it just, young kid, solid run, but it might catch up to him here in this Carolina series?
Yeah, I think to put it contrasting to Alex Lyon, where he's diving all over the place. Same with Andrew Hammond back in the day. Like, they're diving all over the place. They're making saves. It's unbelievable to watch. Akira Schmid is much more technical. And this isn't a guy who came out of nowhere in the sense that he had a .922 save percentage during the season in 18 games. So he's been able to be that calm, steady presence. I think that we're going to see it really early. My number one sign for a goalie, and it's not like I'm like opening this light or trying to be tell you something that you don't already know. Yeah, I'm not trying to be a guru by any chance, but the rebound control in the first 5 minutes of the game is going to tell me a lot about whether the moment's too big for him or whether he's just going to be ready to just slide in there and give his team a ton of confidence. I also think it helps. Like, the Devils decor are all over 6'3". Like, they're absolute mutants that move the crease, clear everyone out of the way. Look at Dougie Hamilton and Kevin Ball, both 6'6". Like, I just think that they've built a team that is made to compete in the postseason. And up front, they've got the talent with the Jack Hugheses of the world, and obviously what he brings to the team. But I just think that you're looking at a team with so much depth up front, and they're going to be a tough out, man. This series, like, the names don't necessarily catch me. They don't have, I think Carolina more so doesn't have that number one superstar. I bet against them in round 1. I'm betting against them here in round 2. I got the Devils moving on in this series in 7 games, but man, it's going to be fast hockey out there. Like, all the forwards on both teams can just fly.
Well, what's interesting is they both drive possession, right? You look at the underlying numbers, like both teams, number 1 and number 2 in the league in expected goal differential. So who's going to drive possession more? That's what I'm interested to find out in this series.
Who's your X factor on each side?
I mean, I guess, like, we already talked about Akira Schmid, but like, that guy, if he is going to be as good as he was in round 1, I think he could carry this team pretty far, man. Like, he could go on a serious run, which would be incredible for him to do, kind of come out of nowhere. But we've seen that happen before. Look at Jordan Binnington. Like, it's happened before where someone's kind of come out of the woodwork here, who's come into a playoffs after not starting. I mean, Matt Murray did the same thing back when he was in Pittsburgh. Didn't start, but came in midway through, after a couple of losses and carried his team. Like, if they can get the necessary goaltending against a team that plays so well structured like Carolina, who doesn't allow a lot of goals, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this series plays out. I think goaltending is going to be somewhat an X factor on both sides.
All right. Well, I'll give you a couple names. I'm not scared of names, Mikey. Timo Meier has to be better. He took that ridiculous ridiculous hit.
Yeah, man. Like, here's the thing, though. Timo Meyer, because he took that thunderous hit, I will be curious to see, how he actually responds from that.
He had 0 points in 7 games in round one.
Yeah, he was not good. He hasn't been good since he got there. Like, realistically, he hasn't been great, at least. Not what everybody expected. He was the number one trade target and hasn't really been the superstar that people thought he'd be when he got on the Devils. But I don't know. Like, you just got to hope that if you are the Devils, that he doesn't play timid after taking that big hit, that he's not going to be afraid to go over the blue line and make the necessary plays. He's a power forward. He's a big guy. He has to take that type of contact. Hopefully that hit didn't kind of scare him away from being that type of player.
And on the Hurricanes, I'm going with Martin Necas as a guy who also struggled in round one, was a -5, was a guy who only had 1 goal in 6 games, 3 points. I think that there's a lot more in his bag of tricks than he showed in round one. So I'm looking at the secondary scoring. I think the Ahos of the world and the Hugheses of the world are going to even each other out. It's who's going to be the X factor and come up clutch in those big moments. Another easy answer. I mean, Andre Palat, we talked about his playoff prowess. His next playoff point will be the 100th of his NHL career. He's played 145 games, has 50 goals and 49 assists. Like, huge playoff performer for him too. And then on the back end on New Jersey, like, pick your guy. Is it going to be Dougie Hamilton? Is it going to be John Marino? Like, Severson can be a guy that steps up, but it's going to be fast hockey. It's going to be competitive hockey, and I can't wait. I'm a little upset though, Mikey. No longer do we have 4 games a night. That's just a hockey fan's dream.
You know what,
No?
Round 2 is okay. Round 2 is still okay because now you get to watch everything. Like, I didn't get to watch the Jersey Rangers all that much because I was clearly focused on the Leafs Lightning, watching that situation unfold. So, and they overlap nights every day. So I didn't get to watch it as intently as I would have liked to. Now you can actually watch every game. You got the 7 o'clock start, you got your 9:30 start. They'll blend into each other. You can actually get a full scope of the entire playoffs. I still like the scheduling here in round number 2.
All right, I'll buy it. I'm down. Let's roll with that. And you got 2 great games to watch tonight. We'll save the Western Conference every Tuesday on Locked On NHL. We have our Western Conference roundup with our friend over at Locked On Dallas Stars. Are you kidding me right now? If you're a Dallas Stars fan, you got to be feeling pretty good up until overtime last night. I thought Dallas played so well last night. Like, they have so many stars, and then all of a sudden this Seattle Kraken team is ridiculous. Like, they just come at you with waves.
If anyone else not named Joe Pavelski wanted to score a goal last night, they would have won that game. But he apparently was the only one who had a goal pass that one. Scored 4 of them, but they needed 5 and they didn't get it.
So for more on the Dallas Stars, go check out Dane Lewis and Locked On Stars, and then Erica Ayala and Locked On Kraken. And then here on Locked On NHL, the flagship show, we've got tomorrow Power Rankings, where we'll leave it over for those guys. Enjoy the hockey tonight. Devils and Carolina Hurricanes start 7 p.m., and then it's followed by the Edmonton Oilers and Vegas Golden Knights. Mikey, a storyline I don't think anyone would have thought when the draft happened there 8 years ago. We got number 1 versus number 2 in the best draft of the last 15 years. McDavid versus Eichel. I need your picks, man. So let's end off with that. Who are you taking in that series? And then who are you taking in Seattle against Dallas?
So I've got Dallas winning that series. You know, they lost last night, but they're the better team. They are the better team, and I think they'll figure it out. I don't see Ottinger allowing 4 goals in a period again and 3 goals in, 52 seconds or something like that. Just don't see that happening again here. He'll lock it down like he typically does. So I got Dallas winning that one. I could see him winning this in 5-6 games. I think we got a 7-gamer coming up in Edmonton and Vegas. I really do. Now that Vegas has some healthy pieces back, I think that it's going to give Edmonton a good run for their money. But ultimately, McDavid, Draisaitl, I believe, will be just a little bit too much to handle. There's question marks on both ends in goaltending with Larry Brossoit in Vegas. But, what do we know about Stu Skinner in Edmonton, right? They're both very raw when it comes to being playoff, goaltenders. So I think ultimately, though, it's going to come down to who's the better team. And to me, that is the Edmonton Oilers. With all the additions that they've made over the course of the last, year and a half, I guess, if you want to even go back to bringing in Evander Kane last year. So I think the Oilers will take that one in 7.
Time will tell, but we'll be here every step of the way on Locked On NHL. For more on the Maple Leafs, go check out Mike DiStefano and David Morasuti over at Locked On Maple Leafs. For today, we say goodbye. For Mike, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On NHL podcast. It's your team every day.